Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. I can tell that there's actually humidity today and it's randomly really warm. I'm trying to think what it would be in Celsius, but it's like 50 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I feel like that's like around like 15 and it's like it was just snowing a week ago. Global climate change. I don't know what to say about that. I do believe in global climate change, but yeah, it's just unfortunate. So I actually had a pretty productive morning, which was shocking considering I spent pretty much all of yesterday sitting around doing nothing. I was in this mode where I would get up and do something, and then I would finish it, and then I would need to sit down because I was tired. I do have some sort of weird cold I'm overcoming where I'm sort of like, my throat hurts, and I'm sneezing, and it's really disgusting. And I'm going to see my family today. They're the ones who probably gave this to me because they're basically the last people I saw besides people at the restaurant. Because in America, we obviously don't stay home if we're sick because that's for Europeans. I think Russian people are like Americans with this, from what I've been told. As an example, like every time when I would get bronchitis, it would be like, in Finland, they'd be like, oh, we're not going to give you anything. And I'm sitting there dying, and I'm like, this is terrible. Whereas I'm pretty sure they would give you antibiotics or something in the US and Russia because they want you to go back to work. Meanwhile, I was literally sitting there dying for like 1 to 2 weeks. It was really terrible. So there's that. But yeah, I'm feeling better. I actually woke up and was productive and, did the things like made my bed. And I have a couple trips coming up, and I would like to note that the discontinuation of traveling is happening after the summer because I'm slightly psychopathic and I plan out everything like months and months in advance. So these trips were already planned. That does not change the fact that I'm like ugh about them, but I'm at least packed for Iceland, and then I'm going to Hawaii for a friend's wedding, and that one is a little bit harder to pack for because I don't really understand what the weather is like in Hawaii at this time of year. Okay, so what I want to talk about today, and I actually thought for a long time about what exactly I was going to talk about in this video, is what feeling autistic feels like, what being autistic feels like. And I thought about this yesterday morning when I woke up, and then I had no energy to record, and then I decided I was going to do it today. I thought about the video some more, and I'm also going to try to make a Russian version of this, but I had to really think about how I was going to express this, and obviously, I'm still better at expressing myself in English than in Russian, so I'm going to attempt to do that here. And I guess what I'm trying to get across from this video, aside from answering questions people have asked me directly, is destigmatizing autism a bit more, understanding that it comes in many shapes and sizes, I suppose. There are different levels of it, and I've discussed this already. Like, I'm on level 1, which is not the highest. Level 3 is like the very dysfunctional side of it. Level 2 is like you can probably still tell. Level 1 is like you can't really tell. Probably that's how it is. But there are certain behaviors now that I've studied the disorder, or whatever we want to call it, neurodivergence. I'm sorry, I'm really not that politically correct. Like, it is considered, what do they even consider a neurological disorder? I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's like what it is actually considered. So yeah, I kind of will talk about, like, looking back, ways that it made sense that I had it, and then ways that it now manifests in my life, or challenges it creates, as well as maybe some of the benefits of it. I'll start with benefits, right? So, because let's be positive today. I'm in a little bit more of a positive mood since I was actually productive, cleaned, packed, like I actually had some energy, so that's good. And I'm going to see family, and yeah, all that fun stuff. Okay. So, I don't think that I would have been able to learn Russian as well as I've learned Russian without being autistic. Autistic people tend to have this special interest thing, which can literally be anything. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other things it was for me. I think in high school or middle school it was like fashion. Then I think it evolved into language, and then more specifically into Russian, also into travel, also into personal finance. That's like the latest one. Like, Russian is kind of a permanent special interest, whereas I have these other special interests that kind of wax and wane depending on the season of my life. I guess I'll put it that way. Psychology is another one. Like, I don't as actively study psychology now as I did when I was in Finland, but that's another one. It's just sort of like when you're bored, what do you find yourself gravitating to? Not even bored, but when you need a brain break. Let's put it that way, as I always call it. Another thing, okay, well, yeah, let's think about more positives. That you're so obsessed with something that you can learn it very well compared to neurotypical people. Okay, I'm trying to think of some other positives, but I'm not sure I can right now, so let's see. I mean, one thing is like there are other autistic people out there, so when you kind of find your tribe, so to speak, and you get with people who you can like, feel like you can communicate with and be yourself, that's a pretty cool feeling. Maybe it's not something like neurodiverse. Yes, it's not something neurodiverse people experience every day, feeling like they can have a conversation with ease. Although it is for, um, you know, neurotypical people, they just kind of feel like they can talk to anybody and maybe like connect with anybody. I feel like the connection thing feels a lot rarer if you're neurodivergent, but maybe it feels stronger than that of a neurotypical person. I really can't pretend to know what the difference would feel like. There's also this quote, if you've met one autistic people, yes, that's correct English. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So there is really a lot of room for breadth and depth of how this disorder or diagnosis, whatever you want to call it, comes across. Because, again, people have different special interests. There are different aspects of it that manifest differently in different people. So for me, I don't have any of those, like, behaviors, like the stimming behaviors that are visible. So like hand flapping or like rocking, or like there are certain like repetitive motions that people will make. Like I had a friend who would kind of do like something like with her hands. Yeah, probably another thing I thought about is like I'm pretty sure most of my friends growing up are also autistic, but I highly doubt any of them are going to ever go figure that out, because it's sort of like if you're functioning and you're autistic, what's the point of actually knowing that you're autistic? And people don't usually like to know what's wrong with them, right? Because even though we're trying to be more acceptive, and, at my workplace that we do the whole diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and discussing these issues as part of that, and we're really trying to get more like accepting of all the neurodiversity, I think that I'm still from a generation where it's sort of frowned upon having these sorts of things. So there's no real benefit for being like, oh, I'm now realizing that I have a disability, which in the US, as I understand, that can be kind of good, because they will have these diversity quotas for people with disabilities. So now that is something that I put on my work applications when I'm applying for jobs, which is not something that exists in Europe. I'm not sure why. In the US, we're very into this affirmative action thing, so that's if you're a minority, like not white. I'm not sure they care as much about you being a woman, even though you're still a minority. Maybe, I actually don't know, but you're usually checking off your ethnicity, so if you're not white, that kind of works. Unless you're Indian or Asian, because those people are also already, like, overrepresented in these, like, higher echelons of society in terms of, workplace achievement, so the government doesn't do that. It's more of, like, Black and Hispanic communities and first-generation college students and people who have a disability, which, again, can be autism. Okay, so, again, I don't really have too many stimming behaviors, like, that are visible to other people. I do remember one time, like, the first time I ever drank when I was younger, I started doing this rocking back and forth thing, and I have no idea where that came from, and it was really weird. But I don't know if it could be one of those things where my mom was pretty strict growing up, so if I tried to do any sort of, like, weird behavior, she would probably just yell at me and tell me to stop. And then, as my aunt said, I had the fear of God in me from my mom because she was scary when I was young, so I believe that would be enough to stop the stimming behaviors. I don't know if I naturally would have developed any sort of stimming behaviors, like this rocking thing, if I had a different mom growing up. But whatever. Anyway, maybe it's fine because, again, people don't, like, know I'm autistic. Like, I go around pretty frequently just, like, telling people randomly I'm autistic if it comes up. And people are usually pretty surprised. But, again, I feel like I do this to kind of spread awareness and, yeah, like, inform people that it can look different than, like, a stereotypical autistic person. Okay, so stimming. All right, so, like, I notice that places where there are a lot of people, I've always gotten really overwhelmed. I've hated New York City since I was a child. I had this big trauma around seeing somebody throw up when I was there. I don't know. That just really grossed me out. And then I developed germaphobia. I don't know if this has anything to do with autism. During a time when my parents were getting divorced, because I think I needed to exert some sort of control in my life. So there is actually, I think it's something like 20% of autistic people have OCD. Now, I have not been diagnosed with OCD. I don't know if OCD is something I kind of had when I was younger and I grew out of. The first therapist I ever saw said that I had OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and I could see that when I was younger, but again, I think I sort of grew out of it, if it was even there. But I developed germaphobia when my parents got divorced because I think I just needed to control something because my life felt really out of control. And I just had these very weird rituals around, like, anytime I would touch my remote or my PlayStation, I had to wash my hands first. Like, I had this, like, compulsive hand washing. And then I also had this thing where my feet couldn't touch the ground after I took a shower. So I always had to put socks on immediately after I stepped off the bath mat. And then I couldn't touch my hair against things because it felt dirty, besides things that were like my pillow. It was very weird. And and also, like, if I was wearing shorts, I didn't want my legs touching things. And then one day I just decided I didn't want to be like that anymore, and I got over it. And, like, my family actually does remember this because it was, like, weird, because, like, it would be certain things also. Like, I remember I had just taken a shower. Like, there's something around taking showers. Like, and it was like a family friend, and he came up to me and hugged me, and, like, my arms were exposed, and I had just washed them, and then I freaked out and had to go wash my arms. So this is really weird, and sometimes I actually forget that this was part of my life, and yes, I understand it sounds crazy. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, wow, I can't believe, like, that happened to me, sort of thing. And actually, I think the time that this family friend touched my arms, I got so freaked out that I, like, locked myself in the bathroom for an hour, and just, like, maybe that was a stimming thing, is what I'm trying to get at. So, yeah, like, it was very weird, and, you know, did that come from an autism thing? Maybe. Was that, like, some other sort of psychological issue? Probably. But, you know, where is the overlap? And this is kind of what I get at, where a lot of times it is really hard to talk in isolation about autism due to the fact that, like, you know, the neurodiversity thing, like, a lot of them have, like, overlap. So, like, and I will talk more about this, but, like, you know, ADHD overlapping with autism, pretty common, as well as, like, I have been diagnosed in the past with BPD, which is a personality disorder, and kind of the ways that, you know, all three of these things have emotional dysregulation as a common tenet among them, if you will. So sometimes it's hard to know kind of like what belongs to what, or if all of them simultaneously cause the same thing, which one do you say it's attributing to? And also, like, when you're making diagnoses, you know, like, obviously I don't do that, the specialist does, but yeah. So, yeah, that was really weird. I don't know. I moved past that. I got older. I was always pretty rigid about certain things. Like, that was the thing. Like, there was a rigidity. I was very rigid about, like, spending money. Low-key, still am a little bit sometimes. Probably why this apartment thing is, like, stressing me out. Because I'm like, every financial video says you should not spend more than 30% of your income on rent, and that is not what I'm doing, and it is against the rules. So there's, like, this sort of, like, tick almost that, like, mentally, that it's like I try to accept it and I'm like, but no, because it's not, like, correct, you know. So it's sort of like there's that. And then also, you know, it's funny because I've gotten away from this again, probably because of traveling and being more open-minded now, because that's kind of what that does to you. I was very stringent, like, religiously growing up, and I was kind of a jerk, and my mom really didn't like this. And I was like, I just looked at her the other day, last week, no, it's probably 2 months, I don't know, sometime in the last recent history of time. And she was like, she did, all right, I'm not going to get into that whole story, but she came to tell me she had an issue with my behavior as a child. I look at her and I go, what do religious people who have low self-esteem like to do? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, behave self-righteously, right? Because what do people who have low self-worth like to do? They like to make other people feel bad about themselves to make themselves feel good about themselves, which is very pathetic, and I feel very bad for these people. But, like, it is a very universal human behavior, which feeds into the whole jealousy thing, which I'm going to, again, talk about later at some point. So, okay, I'm going to pause this. Hold on. Again, super paranoid about my videos getting deleted, so there's that. Okay, so yes, there's sort of a rigidity. So autistic people really like their schedules. And again, I probably had a lot of relationships with autistic people growing up. So I remember, like, having friends who, if some sort of plan got messed up and was not exactly the way that it was planned, they would kind of freak out and it would stress them out. I understand that. I used to feel that way too. Then I started traveling, and when you travel, there's a lot of ambiguity. There are a lot of things that don't go the way they're supposed to, and you kind of are forced to get over this. But for some people who don't step outside their comfort zone and never really have that experience, that's not exactly how that goes. Okay, so yes, because I do want to talk about dating a little bit too, because I've listened to stuff about that, and I'm gonna like talk about my observations from my friends and like maybe also a little bit for myself. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit more about like, again, what stimming looks like for me, aside from the rigidity stuff. So I started realizing like I really liked being places where there weren't any people. It's almost like, so the really hard thing about that, about like explaining this again, has to do with like the fact that I supposedly have BPD means that I'm hypersensitive to the emotions of people around me. It could also, so, you know, my neuropsych eval lady doesn't think I have BPD, but I have like a heightened awareness of other people's emotions, which is super annoying as an autistic person, because it's like I can literally like feel everybody's emotions, but then I don't know how to react to them, and it's like it's exhausting. I think that's why I've had periods of time in my life where I've just like gotten into drinking, because drinking is the only thing that really like blunts me being able to feel other people's emotions, because it dulls your senses. That or just avoid people. But you know, I'm pretty like social or like curious about other people, so avoiding people is not really like what I like to do. But I don't like being around people who drain my energy, and sometimes, especially with a new situation, like walking into meeting somebody I've never met before, like I don't know what it's going to be. It's like, you know, flipping a coin. Either I'll feel really exhausted or I'll feel really energized. And I can even think back to like I've had a couple interactions with like people I've just met this week, and you know, it's literally flipping a coin. That's all I have to say about that. So there were certain things, like I loved going to community college because people don't stay on campus at community college, and I could just walk around and like control my environment. Like I would like eat my sandwiches, like they were really delicious, and I would eat those like every Thursday at 6 p.m. before I'd go to like my religious meeting thingy. Like I don't know why that's a memory I have so fondly, but I think I just really loved those sandwiches. They were so good. Wow. Provolone cheese and mushrooms and something else. Delicious. Okay, and then I would go running, and I always had access to this locker room, and I would like store extra clothes there, and I would take a shower there, and I would do that between classes when I needed my brain break, or sometimes I had a bike in the back of when I drove the minivan. That was pretty sweet. I miss the minivan sometimes. It got given to my brother, and then it got donated, and I'm like, why couldn't I just have it? Because I had to pay for my stupid $15,000 car. Again, I resent this because both my brothers got free cars. It's $15,000 I could have had towards the down payment on my house. Okay, anyway, let's get over that, even though it's hard, man. It's really hard. Okay, so I would, like, you know, do all that stuff. I'd, like, run into people. I would, like, talk to them for, like, 5 minutes, and that fills up my social meter as I talk about. Yeah, because another thing with being autistic, again, the, like, not wanting people to be emotionally close to you, I would often find, especially in Finland, that I was, like, in these, like, friendship, relationship things where it was, like, I felt like I could never give the person as much emotional bandwidth as they required, which is kind of funny. This feels like a perpetuating cycle, because this is the way that I actually have felt with my dad. Like, it feels like anytime I approach my dad, I'm, like, emotionally draining to him. Although, to be honest, now it's kind of going the other way around, too, because every interaction I have with my dad, I feel worse about myself afterwards, so I just don't want to talk to him, which is good, because my whole life I really wanted a relationship with my dad. Now I'm like, whatever, and that feels a lot better, to be honest. Maybe that's sad. I'm aware that sounds sad, but you know, as you get older, you just like accept things and get over them. That's Diesel. He threw up today in my room, and he hasn't been eating that much. He threw up some bacon. I thought, if anything, he would like some bacon, but I'm really worried because now I don't want to have 2 dead dogs, like, within a 6-month time span. That's really a lot for me emotionally. But yeah, emotions are really different with autistic people, because you have sort of a bottom-up versus top-down processing, and I'm trying to remember who has what. I think... Oh, crap, I can't remember. I think autistic people have top down and normal people have bottom up. So it's almost like you have emotions, but you're not like aware of them. That's the best way I can explain it. Or like sometimes you're really confused about like why you're feeling a certain way. And it's just like really hard for you to work through your emotions because you're like unaware of them almost. Like they're there, and then sometimes I feel like they come out in weird ways. Like sometimes the way I feel about it is it's like somebody's like poking me, and then I just like freak out on them. I actually accidentally did this the other day with my stepmom in my whole housing thing, because she's like, oh, you found a place, and I was like, no. She's like, what does this mean? No. And then I was like, I don't appreciate the fact that I have to leave the house, so leave me alone. And I said some other things that I'm not proud of. So then I just said, please give me some space. So that's actually, that works the best. When I'm like, you know, have a friend or whatever, and I'm like freaking out, or whoever the relationship is, and they're like, do you need some space? And I'm like, yeah. It's sort of like, I've heard in people in relationships have like a keyword like banana or something, or like ow. Well, some people don't like ow because of like, you know, the connotation, but then it's like, it's kind of like you just take a break. So maybe what I feel like is autistic people need a lot of breaks. Otherwise they just get like really overwhelmed, and then they kind of just freak out, and then like nobody understands why they're freaking out. It's like because they can't manage their emotions, okay? Because their emotions are not the same. Like, they just don't have emotional regulation. Like, I don't even know what an autistic person would have to do to get emotional regulation. Maybe some meditation crap. Like, I have no idea. Like, literally couldn't tell you, because I'm not good at this. I just like sometimes walk away, or sometimes I freak out if I can't help it, like I did the other day. Again, not proud of it, but it's probably no, it's not the first time. It's happened like 3 times in the last year, and it's not good. Okay, anyway, whatever. So, again, it's rough. So stimming, again, looks more like me just getting away from people. So I used to love, like, at community college, nobody would be in the library, or I used to love being at Rutgers in the business school after, like, 5 p.m. because nobody would be there, and I could just sit alone on the couch. Like, I love being in public when nobody's around. But then when I'm in public, when there are a lot of people around, I really don't like it. Because the thing I like about being in public is I'm, like, exploring my environment, I'm, like, going around, I'm, like, I have autonomy, I'm doing my own thing. Like, I just like it, and it's, I don't know, like, walking around. But then when I go to the mall, and there are a lot of people, or, like, the worst thing is when I go to the university in La Pedronta at like 12 p.m. and like everybody and their mother is there, and it's like the line's really long, and it's just like I don't even know these people, but like it overwhelms me because there's just so many people. And then what if I see somebody I know, and then like, oh my god, and then it freaks me out. And then yeah, so I'm just really like afraid of running into people, you know, which my dad, I remember saying that when I was young, and maybe he's autistic, whatever, I don't know, not my problem. And then my sister also saying this, but some of this too can also stem from feeling like over criticized, and like people are watching you, and then feeling paranoid. So there is also that, because I have Googled why this happens. So maybe that could be both. But yeah, I just feel super at peace when I'm alone and nobody's around me. So places that have a lot of people, like when I was in Malta over the summer, and especially because I knew I was going to see my family, and no offense to my family who watches this, I knew that that interaction was going to be really like draining for me, because it was going to be like with my family nonstop for a long period of time. And like, obviously my family like has my best interests, or I like to think they do, at heart, but like there are still times when they'll say something that upsets me or like triggers me, and like then I have to go like deal with it in a corner by myself because I'm not trying to make a scene. And I don't really quite have like the balls, for lack of a better way of putting it, yet to be able to be like, hey, I don't like those comments. Maybe someday I will, but right now I'm not there yet, and that's okay. So, yeah, I basically did the stimming thing in Malta for 3 days before my family came, where I just, like, sat alone in the hostel because I just, like, there were too many people outside, and I was just tired, and I think one day I went out, but then there were 2 days where I was just alone, and I was like, I need this. And then it took me, like, forever to get there on the bus. It was terrible. That's when I decided Malta has terrible public transportation. Can make a whole video about that, honestly, because it was pretty bad. And then I got there, and then I was just kind of dead, and then I was just doing a lot of stimming. And usually the way I do this is, like, either I'll hang out with my sister, or, yeah, we were watching, like, HGTV or whatever it is, like, some home improvement show for, like, hours, and it was honestly great. But the other thing it looks like now, or maybe, you know, not when I'm traveling, is that I will just lay down and do nothing. So I had one friend who would be like, I need to go stare at a wall for an hour. I think that sounds a lot weirder, and that's definitely not what I do. I usually will lay down. Like, I used to have these, like, sometimes I end up taking a nap, but sometimes I just lay there, and I just, like, let myself think, and I let myself do absolutely nothing. I'm not on my phone. I'm not even, like, listening to music half the time. I'm literally doing nothing and trying my best to take in, like, no stimulus. So, like, I'll, like, sometimes lay on the bed, what else? Like, lay on the bed, lay on a couch, and, like, sometimes I'll do this for, like, up to 40 minutes to an hour, and again, I'm not sleeping, And I'm aware that this is not something that regular people do because I've literally never seen anybody else do this. So my one friend who stares at a wall, we actually were traveling together a lot, and like she's probably like the easiest person for me to travel with because we both kind of hit the pumpkin hour, as I call it, you know, like in Cinderella, where we go back to wherever we're staying at like, I don't know, by 10 o'clock at the latest, and then we both just don't talk to each other, and then we just lay there, and then I don't know, sometimes I'm on my phone, sometimes she's on her phone, sometimes I'm just sitting doing nothing, or maybe I was doing job applications one time when we were in Switzerland, whatever. Sometimes I'm like talking to somebody else on my phone or like texting somebody, like doing whatever I feel like I need to do. But like, I don't feel like I have to like give like attention to her 24/7 when we're traveling. I did sometimes feel like when we were like just chilling, like living together in Finland, like she wanted to see me more than I could always provide because I just take longer to do my work, and then I like exercise and I clean my house and I do a lot of things that take a lot of time that I like to do alone because they're probably also stimming activities. I'd say cleaning is a stimming activity. Just makes me feel better, and it's like mindless, and it doesn't involve a person. And I also find that when I'm working and I have to interact with people for work, I get really tired too, and then that's like exceptionally when I notice that I don't have social energy. I feel like in Finland I had a lot more social energy, but again, drinking is pretty big in Finland, so like a lot of times I'd be drinking and then I just like don't notice what's going on, and that makes it easier for me to be around people. Like, this is really sad, but like I'm just trying to like admit this honestly, like this is how this works. I don't know. I think drinking creates a whole nother set of issues, so I'm not sure I'd recommend that. I actually wouldn't recommend that, right? This is like a poor coping strategy, but like I'm just trying to explain like how it works. Although drinking for me was also pretty weird because sometimes it would like speed things up because of the ADHD thing, so it doesn't act as a depressant, it acts as a stimulant because stimulants act as depressants for you. So this was maybe another way I started realizing I had ADHD, because of like the way that like alcohol would work in me was not the same way it'd work in other people from what I'd observed. I mean, some people, but like kind of depends. I don't know. Hard to tell. Okay. So, all right, let me think about this. Okay. So, I think that's everything for stimming. Now I want to go more into the relationships category because this is where I think things get pretty hairy. I was listening to something by Healthy Gamer GG, shout out. He did like a whole 1 hour and 20-minute session on autism. He does not have autism. He definitely does not have autism. I can tell you that for a fact just by watching him. He's pretty normal. But in there he does do like a whole section on dating and kind of explaining how it is so hard for people who are autistic to date, that they kind of do get to this point where they just sort of like give up completely and just like it's just too hard and they just don't want to go back at it. Like, I think about like one of my friends who she was pretty good at like going out there and dating, and something happened with her like last relationship where, I don't know, I'm not like super close with this friend anymore, that like after that it just felt like she just gave up and like will not date anymore. And like I think, yeah, she was just really hurt from that. But the funny thing too, like there's almost more of like a limerence component involved in it with her specifically that I've kind of observed, where like the more the guy doesn't really give a crap, the more she likes the guy. And I'm like, well, that's not going to facilitate a long-term relationship. You know, if that's not your goal, that's fine. Some people just like to date and have fun, you know? But like it was really hard for her because she felt like she was finally starting to like feel something, right? Like she actually has a big issue, and this actually lends itself nicely to what I was saying before about the whole having emotions and being able to sort of like understand your emotions or feel your emotions. It almost felt like everybody she would date, she like could not feel anything towards. Like she didn't like love any of the people she dated, and I'm like, that's so crazy. But then again, you know, for me that's a little bit different because the whole BPD thing, it's like you almost have an issue where you like fall in love with people too quickly once you start dating them, or you like idealize people initially at the beginning. And like I will say that's an experience I've had and it sucks, and I'm trying to more like logic check myself with that now that I'm older, or like talk to other people about it so that they can logic check me too. Like I think that's another thing is like being autistic, it's like so hard for you to interact with people that sometimes you feel like you like doubt yourself a lot, and then you try to like reality check yourself against other people with a lot of different situations because you're like, is this rude? Like that's a really hard part, right? Is not being rude. Like I feel like I was always coming across as rude and not trying to. It was funny because one of my best friends, she's like, the thing I like about autistic people is it's really hard to offend them. And I was thinking about whether that's true or not, because, like, I do feel like I'm very sensitive and there are things that can offend me, but I've also, like, very honestly thought about the things that offend me are things that I'm already sensitive about. So that's like a me problem. Like very specifically, like how I dress, because like I've definitely had body dysmorphia like my entire life. I mean, congratulations, I grew up in America and also grew up in a family that like constantly talked about what people's bodies looked like, so that makes sense. So like what I wear and how that fits my body makes me like freak out, okay? Like, and this has been an issue, to be honest, with me and my stepmom like for a long time. And like I understand why it bothers me because it's something I'm already sensitive about. Some of the other stuff too, like especially on the Russian side of my channel, the whole why aren't you married? Why don't you have kids? Now, while I do not think that's the only goal in life, I do still feel like that's like a goal that I have, and the fact that I have not reached it yet maybe makes me a little upset, even though like I've done a lot of really cool things in my life, but I also do feel like that is like maybe the next step because I'm already working. I'm like, I have no other goals in life at this point. I mean, the PhD would be cool to finish, like don't get me wrong, but that's not gonna like help me in any way. It's just like a cool thing to have. Like it's not giving me a competitive advantage in the workforce. I'm gonna be pretty honest with that. Like owning a house, which usually getting married and having kids and owning a house kind of all go together. Owning a house just to own a house because you're single, I'm gonna be honest, is kind of stupid. Even though I low-key want to do it just because it would make me feel kind of empowered, but whatever. Yeah, I did just listen to something today that was about, like, women living on their own. It's actually pretty good for their creativity and just, like, healing trauma and stuff like that. So I'm like, maybe I should just be okay with living alone. I've always had this phobia that living alone would make me very, like, uncompromising and unyielding by the time I had to go live with somebody else because I already got used to doing things my way all the time, and then I'd be, like, freaking out on somebody. And I'm already, like, an OCD enough of a person with, like, certain stuff, so yeah, okay. But yeah, so like relationships can be hard because you can't really express emotions the way that like people expect you to express emotions, right? Like I've been accused by like more than one partner who I've been with romantically of like being very cold and distant emotionally, and do you even like me? And like that's honestly hurtful because why would I be wasting my time dating you if I didn't like you? And if I decide I don't like you anymore, I'm just going to break up with you, which is like, that sounds terrible. But as I said, like there was one time when somebody was like, what happened with your boyfriend? I was like, I honestly realized I could not see myself living with this person for the rest of my life. And it felt dishonest to continue a relationship with somebody who I did not feel that way about. Because like, to be very like open, it's like, I don't really view dating as like a casual fun activity. I view it much more as like, this is either going to lead to a breakup or this is going to lead to me marrying them. Like, I don't want to be in this, like, perpetual, I'm dating this person forever. In Russian, there's this expression to sit on two stools, or, two chairs. That's really what it translates to. And, you know, a lot of people are uncomfortable with this, like, black and white thing, and I was talking about this before, like, gray zones and stuff. And I honestly, like, have a really hard time having an issue with a lack of black and white thinking, because black and white thinking is pretty bad. It's a lot of these things that like get diagnosed pretty maladaptively in things like BPD, like personality disorders, like other personality disorders like narcissism. Autism might have it too. I'm trying to think. But anyway, the only time that I think that sitting on two chairs is bad is like when you're in a relationship and you're sitting on a chair with another person. Like that's not okay. And anytime I've like tried to start dating a guy who is like talking to another girl, I'm like, that's fine, you can have her. Like if you're confused about who you want, we're done. So I don't know. But that's not really an emotion thing. That's kind of like a logic thing. Like I know a lot of people think like dating is a game, and I have like made a video about this like a while ago, like a long time ago in the summer. And it's just, like, I don't have patience for that. Like, to me, it's just, like, stupid. I mean, okay, like, I actually did have this issue, like, where everybody I had a crush on, I would just, like, let them know I had a crush on them, and they were like, ew. And so I couldn't figure out if this was a reverse gender role thing that men felt emasculated, or if it was, like, I wasn't playing this game enough, and it's like, I'm not capable of playing the game. And then some people like to act like you have to play the game, and I'm like, no. I mean, literally, this is how it works for me. I talk to somebody, I decide I kind of like them, I keep talking to them because I like them, and then eventually it will lead to a relationship, maybe, or it doesn't, but I'm not gonna, like, force it or make it weird. So, this whole, like, I think that's why online dating is weird to me, because it's like, you're literally going somewhere with the intention of, like, this is the thing, versus just like organically meeting and talking to people. That like feels better to me. It just feels like there's less pressure and less stress. Yeah, like, so this is actually another thing that's very overwhelming, is like, obviously I know that I'm attractive. I can't pretend to not know that based on how people interact with me. And I feel very overwhelmed with like the amount of attention I get. So again, this leads to stimming behaviors. Like, it does not, sometimes, like, literally, sometimes I joke, but don't joke. Like, I can't wait till I'm, like, old and nobody looks at me. Like, I'm excited. But I'm still young enough that people, like, do stare at me. So it's like, when I'm in public, people stare at me. I mean, they do experiments with babies, and babies stare at beautiful people. Like, this is just part of being attractive, okay? So, yes, babies staring at beautiful people. And, like, you know, humans are, like, a little bit better at that because they realize it's kind of creepy to stare at random people, but, like, people still do it, even if it's by accident, and, like, that makes me really overwhelmed and it makes me tired. If I have an interaction with a guy where I can tell that he's, like, really into me and is, like, trying to, I don't even know, man, like, get with me or something, and I, like, really don't like this person, I find them kind of disgusting. Like, I feel really rude saying this, and I understand this sounds rude, right? This is, like, the issue. It's, like, things I say are just rude. And, like, I don't know, there's one guy in Finland who, like, I call him library guy because he was always talking to me in the library. Like, I wasn't, like, really friends with this guy. He was just, like, talking to me. I wouldn't call him my friend because I didn't like him that much as a person. I think I have to like the person a little bit to call him my friend. That's really what it comes down to. But he was, like, what did he say one time? It was really weird. He was, like, I forget what he said about me being attractive, and I was like, I have to realize that 90% of straight men are attracted to me. And he's like, yeah, well, especially when you're in a country like Finland, and, like, pretty much every girl here is attractive. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I mean, I don't really care, because to me, that's, like, not important. And, like, sometimes people just, like, don't understand this. I don't know. So, like, yes, being attractive as an autistic person is, like, super overwhelming. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, because you get so much tension, you don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't even care, okay? Because, like, I don't be like, oh, I'm so attractive, that means I'm just gonna go with another attractive person. Like, no. I mean, yes, I want somebody I don't find disgusting. Like, this was the thing, is, like, my one friend was like, so what are you looking for? And I was like, somebody who's, like, not disgusting and who's smart. Like, I actually don't really care what the person looks like, as long as they don't make me want to throw up. It's just, I care how smart they are. I want somebody who's, like, way, way smarter than me, which is hard because people already think I'm smart, right? So, there's this whole thing. So, I don't know, but it's just, like, yes, it's annoying. Like, it's so weird to be like, whoever sits there and complains that they're attractive, but when you get a lot of attention, like, this is why I love working from home. People don't see me. People, like, don't see what I look like. Like, when I worked at NASA, it's like, yes, people saw me. People tried to talk to me because I'm attractive. Like, I know that's why people are trying to talk to me, right? And it's like, sometimes people just want the interaction. It's not like they're trying to, like, get with you. Some of these people are, like, married and, like, have families and stuff. But, like, people are just, like, drawn to beautiful people, right? Because there's, like, a health component to it or something like that. But, like, it is very overwhelming for me, and is, like, an activity from which I need to stim. That's what I'm trying to get at. And I'm very, like, that's why, like, when I'm in public a lot, I, like, try not to look at people, or I try, like, scurry away and, like, do my thing, because I, like, don't, because people want to talk to me. People, and I, like, seem very approachable. So, yeah, this is, like, literally overwhelming. Okay, so, the next thing I want to talk about is communication. I had to, like, adjust my situation over here with the sun because it was getting to be a bit too much. Alright, so communication. This is what I want to talk about next. Alright, so autistic people communicate... I hate when this happens. Like, the word comes to me in Russian, and I'm like, I can't use that because nobody's gonna know what I mean. Cardinal, like, completely, basically, different than people... like, neurotypical people. So, one of the issues I had growing up was that, like, my dad's like, you only talk about yourself. So, the way autistic people expect a conversation to go, and a lot of this, I understand, comes from, like, growing up, again, in, like, probably a religious community where I felt like people were always trying to, like, assess my motives. That's really how I feel. Okay. I'm entitled to feel however I want. I say this all the time. It felt very, like... I started to feel uncomfortable with people asking me questions because I felt like they were always, like, trying to judge me. Like, really, that's how I felt. So, I don't like asking people questions that are, like, prying, right? It's sort of like the way you'll communicate as an autistic person is much more like, you volunteer information, and then you expect somebody to volunteer information, like, volunteer the information, okay? You're not pulling it out of them. And it kind of relates to what you're saying, and then you just, the conversation, it's like ping pong, and it goes like that. Like, there's actually not a lot of asking questions. Maybe there'll be like one question, and then the person goes on like a really long soliloquy, you know, like rant about it. And instead of being bored, you're like actually interested because that's the question you asked. So it's, I don't know, like, it's very different. And it's like, I can kind of do like these very scripted conversations with people, but then I have to be with like neurotypical people, but then I have to be careful not to dominate the conversation, which does not come naturally. Whereas it's like when two autistic people start having a conversation, they're very like, it just like flows, and it can go on for like hours. Like, that's literally how it goes. Like, I've had a lot of these kinds of interactions. I know how they go. So yeah, there is that. But then it's also like, you know, again, it's like one autistic person is one autistic person. So you have to have like a certain kind of chemistry with this autistic person and feel comfortable and like not judged around them. Which, like, to be fair, like, I've had autistic people I've been friends with who I originally didn't feel judged by, but then eventually I did, so whatever. But then, you know, I think sometimes this gets into more like some BPD stuff, lack of boundaries, lack of understanding that you are two separate people, and that's literally, that's a whole nother video in and of itself. So it's like, you know, my dad was very like, you don't ask people questions. I'm like, well, because I feel like I'm like prying. So this is like an issue I've had a lot with like communicating with my stepmom, where it's like I'm supposed to like ask her questions, but then I've noticed when I ask her questions, she doesn't want to answer the questions, so then it's really awkward. So then I like will just like talk about the weather or talk about the dogs or talk about my sister, and then I expect that she's just going to respond to that because I don't want to ask her questions because I feel like it's rude. And then it's all like, well, you talking the whole time is rude, but then I get asked a question, so then I answer the question, and you kind of also, like, as an autistic person, you feel like you have to like over explain everything. I have no idea where this comes from, but it's sort of like you can't just like directly answer a question. It's like you do this whole weird like circumlocution thing, and then you get to the answer to the question. I don't know why it works like this. There's a reason, and I literally can't remember it. And usually I do remember the things I've read, but like about things I'm interested in, special interest, right? And autism is probably one of my special interests at this point, but I literally can't remember. I don't know. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of it. Like, I'm trying to think of anything else I can possibly explain, but, like, basically, it affects the way that, like, you sensory intake the world. The funniest thing, really, from my neuropsych eval, aside from the doesn't like it when people try to get emotionally close, was that if there's a stimulus near me that I don't like, I will physically get up and move away from it, which was, like, interesting, according to my neuropsych eval lady. So I don't know, like, and that's kind of true. Like, if something smells or like I've literally done that before. I don't even care how rude it looks. Like, I'm trying to think like when and where I've done that. Like, if at the university, like, somebody's really loud and it's annoying me, then I'll like get up and move, or like somebody smells weird and I'll get up and move, or like, it's like, because it's literally sensory things, right? It's like things I hear or things I smell, not usually things I see, because I can kind of tunnel vision that. People touching me, yeah, I don't like that either. That feels like all Finland, right? This is why I feel comfortable there. So I will, like, I don't know, like, this makes romantic relationships really hard too, because like sometimes you just don't want people touching you. This has been a huge issue with like PDA, because sometimes I'm just out in public doing my thing and it's like, let's hold hands, and I'm like, no, this is literally like messing up my rhythm with walking, and I don't like that. I don't know, like, it's really hard, and it's like, it's so hard, especially when people don't understand it. And like, again, for years, like, I didn't understand any of this. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I haven't even really been in a relationship at which point I've like understood that this is what was going on. And like, now it makes sense. Like, you're just like, wow, like, how did I not figure this out earlier? I think also, like, with children, aside from them just freaking out and you're like, what the heck kind of thing, they don't, like, understand how to play with other children. So I remember feeling pretty bored with other kids and then just, like, going and playing by myself in the corner, because that was more entertaining than, like, trying to, like, talk to other kids. Like, I feel like I just, like, can't fit in most of the time, and then I just give up on trying because, like, I don't want to be fake. I don't know. Like, that's the other thing. So, like, if people don't like me, I'm just like, well, whatever. So yeah, maybe it is like hard to get offended, or you just like, it's not even that you don't care, because it is obviously really hard feeling like socially ostracized in like most normal situations, but it's just sort of like, I just at a point stopped caring, and I just focused on like my special interests and like achieving things, and like I've had a good life, you know, and I have tons of friends all over the world who love me and always want me to come visit them. So I guess really, like, in conclusion, because I feel like I can't even think of more things I can cover at this point. Like, really, I can't, or if I do, I'll make another video about it. But, like, I really want people to know and feel encouraged and motivated that, like, even if you struggle with these things, like, you can learn coping mechanisms, you can still achieve all of your wildest dreams, okay? Like, you can still go, I don't know, live in Kyrgyzstan like I did, you can still go I don't know, like travel the world. You can still go live on your own, go to college, like, do everything you want. And there's like way more support and resources out there now, probably, that there's more awareness than there ever was in the past. So just like, be optimistic despite your condition if this is something that you're going through, and remember that you're never alone in your struggle. And for people who watch this and like they themselves are not autistic, but maybe you like love somebody who's autistic, or you have somebody in your life who's autistic, it's like you just have to approach it with like understanding and love, I guess, but also just accepting that your experience is not going to be the same as theirs, and there may be times when you don't understand the behavior, and that's okay, but that's just how it is, and like unfortunately it just needs to be accepted by both parties. So yeah, I think it's kind of like something, maybe I want people to know more about me, just because of like the way that it obviously affects how I like relate to and interact with other people. And like I'm pretty well socialized, I'd say, like, having traveled the world and like done a lot of academic things. Like I've been in so many different like communities, right? Like I grew up in a faith community. I like know a lot of people in like an academia setting community because of all the like, I've done a lot of academia stuff. I'm still like in the academia world. I like work a corporate job. Used to work at NASA, although it's like I don't think that counts because everybody in NASA is autistic. Not everybody, except the procurement people, but a lot of people at NASA are autistic. So it's like, the only thing you can really do for being autistic is like try to keep being social. And I feel like I've done that. I've just kind of bounced around between places where I feel like I feel comfortable and I feel accepted. I've also found that if I spread the neediness out and I kind of like, go to different environments and get that like breadth of exposure, that kind of helps regulate me in terms of social interactions. That's like really the best way that I can explain it. So I feel much more like I don't get tired because I don't interact with the same people over and over again. Maybe it feels like there are fewer expectations. I don't know. Like in some ways I feel like that's how like moving around has helped, because there's sort of like an anonymity about it. People don't like I think this is hard now that I'm back in New Jersey. It's like people have like known me my whole life, and it's like I've changed a lot, right? It's like I've had like one friend be like I was saying before, it's like, oh, you were so like, what's the word, like self-righteous and kind of a jerk about it. And I was like, yeah, I know, but like, and I'm sorry if I offended you with that behavior, but like if you expect people to stay like the same people they were when they were younger their entire lives, like that's not a growth mindset. And I get that some people never grow, and that's fine too, like, and I have no place to judge that either. But yeah, like things can change, and I guess what I'm trying to say is like the autistic journey can change too, and like it is a challenge, but it does not define who you are as a person. It means you may see the world differently, and you may need to learn different, again, coping mechanisms and strategies for trying to relate to like neurotypical people and like live in a neurotypical world. But that again does not mean that you're not free to be you, I guess is the best way I can put it. Like, be brave. I don't know. I should wear that shirt. I have a shirt. Funny story, side story before I go real quick. When I lived in Kyrgyzstan, I really wanted a shirt that said something with Russian letters, and instead I found one in Denmark, super random, I don't even know how that worked out, and the shirt says, "Bud smelim," like, be brave. So, that's all I have to say. Be brave with your identity, and accept it, and love who you are, in spite of it. Okay, so that's everything for today. I'm gonna have to go now, so I'm not gonna have time for the Russian one, so we'll post these tomorrow. Alright, thank you for your time and attention. I really hope this video helps at least one person. Okay, and until my next video, bye! So, JK, actually, I'm gonna add to this a little bit. Whoa, I think that's from my water right there. That's crazy. Because I made this video, and then I went to my family's house, and then I didn't upload it yet because I didn't want to spam YouTube. And then I learned some things from my family that I thought were really interesting, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to include them in this video. I'm also getting ready to go to work at the restaurant. I just decided to wear my work shirt, and mildly regretting this decision right now. But whatever, it's fine. Okay, so it was a very funny conversation when we were talking about all the grandchildren in the family and how they all behaved when they were young. And I thought it was funny because apparently I was a pretty bad kid. Like, not bad, but just, like, I was spazzing out all the time. And I'm just, like, and nobody at any point thought, like, there was something wrong. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. Like, certain things, especially while I was driving in the car, which is funny because I still hate being in cars. But Things like somebody used to have their hand on my face before I could fall asleep in the car. And what was the other one that was really weird? It was about just like whoever was driving the car had to have like one hand back behind them to calm me. So it seemed like I had a lot of poor emotional regulation even as a really, really young kid. And I'm like, why didn't I have an occupational therapist or something? And then today I talked to my dad and he's like, oh, you did. And I'm like, and he's like, I don't know, I don't really remember. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine. So I don't know, but I found it amusing and thought I'd add that on to the end of this. I was also thinking about if I have an autistic child, like what's the child gonna act like and how do I deal with that? Because honestly, it sounds pretty tricky. So, thought of the day, question of the day. Okay, so that's everything. And we'll see if I record tomorrow. I'm pretty tired and a little bit behind on work and stuff, so I might be lazy and take a break. Alright, so until next time, bye. For real this time, bye.